Welcome to Canadian Chronicle, your front row seat to the pulse of Canada. From Parliament Hill to prairie towns, we break down the latest in politics, crime, the economy, housing, and everything in between. No spin, no fluff, just the facts that matter to Canadians. I'm your host, and in this episode, we're going to delve into a deeply concerning paradox: the relationship between Canada's domestic surveillance efforts and the ever-growing threat of foreign cyber warfare. It's a story of vulnerability, misplaced priorities, and what some are calling a fundamental betrayal of national security. Our sources paint a stark picture. While foreign adversaries, particularly China, Russia, and Iran, are relentlessly exploiting Canada's vulnerabilities to conduct sophisticated cyber intrusions, our own government seems to be doubling down on increasing domestic surveillance of its own citizens. This isn't just an observation. It's a critical indictment of Canada's approach to national security. Let's start by understanding the external threat. The recent cyber intrusion into Canada's House of Commons is described by our sources as nothing less than a moral and strategic collapse. The finger is pointed directly at China, Russia, and Iran as the likely culprits. This isn't theoretical, it's an active, ongoing assault. The Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity itself has identified China as the most sophisticated and active cyber threat. Yet, despite this clear and present danger, the government is criticized for dithering and clinging to delusions of diplomatic engagement with these authoritarian states. It's a failure to name the enemy plainly, born, it seems, from a reluctance to confront their own perceived naivete. This geopolitical cowardice, as one source terms it, isn't confined to cyberspace. We see its manifestation in economic warfare too. Consider the plight of Canadian farmers, specifically those in the canola industry. Bill Pribilski, a Saskatchewan farmer, experienced a staggering $200,000 loss overnight due to China's 75.8% tariff on canola. This wasn't just an economic policy failure, it was a moral catastrophe. Dean Roberts states it bluntly: "Our second largest customer just effectively closed their market to us." China, a regime known for slave labor camps and crushing dissent, is deliberately strangling Canadian families. Why? Because, as the sources suggest, Canada's virtue-signaling EV tariffs provoked a dragon we lack the spine to confront. Beijing retaliates against our EV tariffs by weaponizing canola, a sector vital to Canada's economy, contributing $43 billion and employing 200,000 citizens. And what's Ottawa's response? Ministers simper about constructive dialogue with a regime that views negotiation as weakness. This shows a pattern of weakness and negligence. The government is accused of letting Beijing dominate 67% of our canola market, then acting surprised when they weaponize it. Pierre Poilievre's call to cancel the $1 billion loan to BC Ferries for Chinese-made ships and Manitoba Premier Wab Kinu's demand for EV tariff revenues to go to farmers are highlighted as concrete actions, contrasting sharply with the Liberals' tendency to appease authoritarian bullies. The criticism is severe. When you prioritize climate theatrics over food security, when you tax farmers into oblivion while subsidizing Chinese industry, you are not virtuous. You are a useful idiot. This perceived weakness is directly linked to the government's priorities. The sources argue that Canada is a valuable target because adversaries see a nation adrift, led by a regime more invested in woke posturing than national resilience. The focus on climate dogma that has gutted our energy sector and an obsession with identity politics that fractures social cohesion are cited as diversions from tangible threats. When you prioritize pronouns over pipelines and carbon taxes over cyber defense, you invite predation. This ideological capture and bureaucratic ineptitude, the sources contend, lead to chaos. Now, here's where the paradox truly deepens. While these foreign agents are pillaging our data and exploiting our vulnerabilities, the Canadian government is concurrently pushing for more surveillance, aimed not at external threats, but at its citizens. This is the profound irony highlighted in the sources. We're talking about the development of state corporate super surveillance tools like artificial intelligence and facial recognition technology. The warning is clear. These tools, it is argued, are being weaponized first against conservatives, but will soon target everyone. Think about this. The same government that can't secure its own systems against sophisticated foreign cyber threats now demands greater access to private data under the guise of safety. The sources are unequivocal. Do not mistake this for protection. It's control. We have seen this potential for control in action. The Emergencies Act debanking scandal, where peaceful protesters had their financial accounts frozen, is cited as a stark example of how easily financial privacy can be shattered. Now, imagine that power fused with AI-driven surveillance. The comparison is made to authoritarian regimes. Orwell's nightmare pales beside what Beijing achieves with 700 million CCTV cameras, and our elites emulate their methods while ignoring their aggression. This suggests a troubling alignment of domestic policy with the very surveillance tactics employed by the foreign adversaries we purportedly fear. The notion that tremendous danger lies in too much security is presented when this security is applied internally against one's own citizens. The sources suggest that this isn't just a misstep, it's a systemic rot. The government's incompetence in confronting foreign threats seems to go hand in hand with an urge to exert control domestically. It's as if the inability to secure the nation from external attack is compensated by an increased desire to manage and monitor its own population. This moral and strategic collapse is further compounded by a perceived lack of sacrificial responsibility within leadership, as exemplified by the discussion around dual citizenship of ministers. If leaders cannot demonstrate undivided allegiance, it creates jurisdictional vulnerabilities and allows foreign powers to exploit divided loyalties. This further weakens the nation's ability to resist external pressures. Even the justice system is implicated in this unraveling order. There's a concern that judges are issuing lighter sentences to non-citizen criminals specifically to shield them from deportation, a practice described as ethical treason and a grotesque perversion of justice. Examples include a permanent resident receiving a conditional sentence for attempting to purchase sex from a 15-year-old and a visitor granted a discharge to evade deportation after twice groping a woman's genitals. This creates two tiers of justice, where foreign criminals receive discounts on their crimes while Canadian victims pay full price. This, too, sends a dangerous signal. Break Canada's laws, and we may reward you. Such actions erode the rule of law and the very concept of national sovereignty, a critical component of a nation's strength against external threats. A society that refuses to defend its boundaries, physical, legal, and moral, does not progress. It disintegrates. The overall picture is one of a nation where priorities are misaligned, and the focus seems misplaced. Instead of building a robust defense against genuine and sophisticated external cyber threats, and instead of confronting economic adversaries with strength, the government is perceived as being paralyzed by ideological capture and turning its surveillance capabilities inward. The fundamental issue, as articulated, is that Beijing smells weakness, and weakness invites predation. So, what's the path forward, according to these sources? First, the call is to name the enemy directly. Attribution of cyber warfare isn't difficult. It's avoided to spare diplomatic discomfort. China's cyber warfare, it is argued, must be met with expulsion of agents, sanctions, and hardened digital infrastructure. Second, there's a strong demand to dismantle the surveillance industrial complex targeting citizens. The emphasis is on empowering individuals, not the state, with encryption and privacy tools. This directly challenges the notion that too much security internally is beneficial. Third, the sources advocate for restoring national pride and a Canada First vision, one that rejects divisions and unites around shared values, seen as necessary for a house to stand and defend itself. Ultimately, this relationship between domestic surveillance and foreign cyber threats highlights a core tension. A government that is seemingly unable or unwilling to effectively counter external aggression while simultaneously seeking greater control over its own populace. This, the sources imply, is not a path to security, but a trajectory towards national peril. As one source powerfully concludes, stand tall, Ottawa, or prepare to kneel, and order is all that stands between us and the abyss. When it burns, only those who build will survive. This is a critical moment for Canada, demanding a shift from moral preening to proactive national defense and a reevaluation of where true security lies, in strength against external threats, and in the freedom and trust of its own citizens. A nation that forgets its farmers, surveils its citizens, and fears naming its enemies is not defending peace, it's surrendering it. The time for moral preening is over. The time to build begins now. Thanks for listening to Canadian Chronicle, where we decode the headlines shaping Canada's future. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who cares about Canada as much as you do. Follow the show on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and leave a rating or comment to let us know what you think. Stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, keep questioning.